Disgusting or well for the other small Wikipedias, and it was especially with the sidebar template where the links to the other language editions of Wikipedia. And there was a discussion that says if you not put the language links there, then they may discourage the work done on the smaller projects. And morally, most of the articles created on the small Wikipedias is mostly like to have the link on the template and to see on the sidebar on the English Wikipedia, on the main page of the English Wikipedia. And the effects on the projects are different. So if there is no line of sufficiency, that there is no encyclopedic content of the encyclopedia on Wikipedia. Actually, if everybody can edit everything, that means that Wikipedia is not an encyclopedia. I can edit some content about some groups on Facebook or on the other social networks, or I can edit something about topics that are not of wide interest for the people who speak the language, and it usually deepens the link between the true encyclopedic content and those that we use in the project. Especially, very interesting thing to say is that the status of the project must be maintained, and that's only possibly using the line of sufficiency. So the line of sufficiency you must guide, you must define it, and to know how to use on the project on the way that will keep most of the users on the wiki, and to keep the content sufficient and of wide interest for your users. Actually, the main effects on the users are that users always want to edit what they want, but you must tell them that it's not possible, because only topics that are in correspondence with the purpose of the project can be edited on the wiki. So here is the main thing that most of the readers of the Wikimedia projects know, and that's that Wikipedia is the free encyclopedia that anyone can edit, but not anyone can edit anything. So this is mostly because of the barriers like the line of sufficiency, and it should not be a problem to keep the users editing there and to direct them how the project could be improved using the such barriers. And the last thing is to mention whether this line is usable on the projects other than Wikipedia. Well, same tips are valid, so if you know what are the guidelines about the line of sufficiency and how it is defined on Wikipedia, you probably know how to define it on the other projects like Wikiquote, Wikiversity, or Wiktionary. Well, the effects also are almost the same on the users, but there is something that must be said, and there are no projects like Wikipedia where the significance of this line is so big that it may discourage the editors to edit on the project. So the problem occurs rarely on the projects like, for example, Wikiversity or Wikibooks or Wiktionary, but the projects like Wikisource or Wikiquote also include the possibility to have the problem related with the line of sufficiency. And the last thing is for you and for the discussions about the topic. If you have any opinions or any ideas how to solve this problem and this issue on most of the Wikimedia projects, you can share it with us here. Okay.
I'm a Wikimedia resident on Open Science, so I plan to work on topics where almost any of them will be hit with notability discussions early on. So I would try to avoid those discussions where possible, and I'm wondering what the best strategy would be. The topics that I will be working on is scholarly journals and repositories in which scholarly data and articles are deposited. So they're very significant in the scholarly community, but by various interpretations of the notability criteria, they will just fall down. Although there is the Wiki project, academic journals, which says basically, okay, if the journal has an impact factor, it has the merit to get a Wikipedia article. But if we go by that manner, then we might have well, tens of thousands of articles about scholarly journals, and those articles are very rarely being read. So the question is, I have an opportunity to kind of define a line here for a certain topic area where most of the articles don't exist yet. And yeah, if you have scored about this topic intensively, I would provide feedback on that.
Okay, do you think that there is a possibility to persuade users who are interested in these topics that it is worth editing on the project and that these articles must exist there?
Yeah, well, I would say if scholars publish their research in such journals, then they are significant for at least some communities. And I don't plan to go for all such journals, just for a selection of those who have met certain quality criteria. And the problem is, well, experts do not edit Wikipedia that much. So amongst the existing editors, there may not be many who are willing to work on those articles. But I will work on some of those articles, and I would like to set up the structure such that if somebody else wants to join, we still have a coherent set of guidelines so that it's immediately clear whether that journal merits an article or not, so that we don't have to have the same discussion 10,000 times.
We have there are the community pump. There are special pumps for special topics. So if you have a specialist topic, you just go to the pump and present your topic, and then lots of people who are specialized in that area will respond to it, and they will give you a reply whether or not they think it's relevant or not. And every time you start a new page and it has been approved, you can go to you can immediately make a talk page and put there a link to the place that has been approved so it does not get deleted.
Okay, so you mean I just started a discussion about the general topic, let's say, of scholarly open access journals?
Yes, every time that you think it's too far from the general topic or it has not been approved, simply present it again to the same place, or you make a special page, a talk page specifically for this topic, and you post like a link on the special village pump, on the specific village pump, so that people always go there when you want to discuss it. Then you have one page with all the discussions, so you can always link to it.
Okay.
That might be the best approach.
Do you have Wikipedia or any other Wikipedia projects?
Yeah, but normally I've just edited articles that were already there, and for those 3 articles where I've tried to start them, or where I've seen things being started, they've always been hit with notability discussions. Normally they survive, but experts don't have the time to spend on such discussions, and here I'm really going to invite experts, editors of those journals, or people who really are knowledgeable about this area, and they will certainly come just once. They don't want to engage in discussions, they will deliver content, they will probably do it according to our criteria, they will post on talk page if necessary otherwise, but they will not come and discuss. And yeah, I just want to avoid such problems from the beginning. That's why
I think especially now when we're talking about, there was this, of course, this claims that Wikipedia is not, Wikipedia contribution is leveling because most of the topics are covered. Obviously, this is stupid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what is true about this line of thought is that a lot of the new articles that are being started are more esoteric, and the ones that are studying them are not necessarily
long-time Wikipedians, because the long-time Wikipedians would have probably already started these topics. So I would guess, and this is a guess, it's not based on any research, that many of these new articles are started by non-veterans of Wikipedia, and obviously they would not be as as close to the guidelines, and they would have problems in getting them better by defining and kind of policing a line of sufficiency. We might be pushing these people away. I'm not saying that the line of sufficiency shouldn't exist, but I would say it should be very, especially with new editors, it should be pretty low.
No, I
Well,
disagree.
actually, the discussion should be very liberal to prevent the editors become discouraged of aiding Wikipedia. Actually, if you tend to be some kind of chief or Sanskrit using on the discussion page about the topic, then you discourage the people waiting there. Well, the most discouraging way, the most common way to discourage a narrator to aid Wikipedia is when he creates a new article to delete his article without any remark on his discussion page. Well, it's basically Wikipedia is, and any Wikimedia project is not a repository of articles, it's some kind of a community of people. And if you don't preserve the people that the topic should be discussed on a separate page about its significance, and that the line sufficiency should be defined as many other guidelines that were defined, then you have problems that probably everybody on the project could aid everything, and that's how the main purpose of a project could break.
But the purpose of Wikipedia is that everybody can edit everything.
Actually, well, that's the main promotion way how to promote Wikipedia. Well, but actually, it's not true. You must use.
You're not saying just that when somebody creates an article, he gets a template, other users can't edit it for a week. But
Actually, the best definition about Wikipedia is that everybody can edit everything which is related with something which is called encyclopedic content.
yes, but you
And everybody can edit only those topics who are worth editing and are of wide interest to the project. Actually, those who are over the line of sufficiency.
But you suggested that you wanted to lower the line of sufficiency, so in case a new user makes a new article, right? So that if a new user makes an article about this chair, let's say the chair is almost significant, then you would say let's lower it a little bit so that it's included.
No, that's not what I'm saying, and it's not. Maybe I put it the wrong way. I don't mean that the line of sufficiency should be lowered, but I think. But I think what is required is the way I see it right now is that Wikipedia has the Wikipedia community has become pretty strong within itself. But I won't be the first one who will be saying that this community is becoming harder to penetrate and harder to join. I think these starting an article, and we're not talking about people who are starting an article as the first thing they do on Wikipedia. In a lot of cases, they are editing first, typos, whatever, But I think I recently started an article. I think it was my first one. I'll talk about it in my presentation, but I'm not. I'm coming from the perspective of images rather than words. And you know, I was met with, you know, the article is there, luckily, but I was met with, you know, I'm okay with opposition, but it was, you know, marked for deletion, as in, like,
so you wanted to have more time before it's marked for deletion?
I don't know if there should be a protocol for that. I think there should be a culture for that. Maybe, and if we're talking about technology, maybe the technology should say this is the first time this person is starting. I think one of the greatest dangers to Wikipedia is disclosing.
What do you want to do?
Much more than that.
But what do you want to do with that particular article? Do you want to wait a while and then delete it, or do you want to keep it?
I happen to know about the top page. Most people who are starting their first Wikipedia articles or first Wikipedia edits don't even know about it. Wikipedia has not done much to make it more prominent. I've been teaching, and you know, I've been assigning Wikipedia assignments to the students and stuff like that. You know, graduate students at NYU, I asked them, do you know about a top page in Wikipedia? 2 of them. We're not talking about people who are not spending time online.
If you are addressed on your top page, you get a big orange bar that cannot be ignored, right? You will see it.
What do you mean?
If someone warns you that your article will be deleted, you will see it on the top page. And you will get a link to them.
If you log in.
No, also as an IP, you get a big
But
orange
then you
bar.
have to get it from the same IP. Well,
That's true.
One
Yes.
here and
But if you don't have top page,
But there will be a big message above the article if it's about to be deleted. There will be a link to the top page, and if you just click that, you will go to the top
Many
page.
countries don't have static IP addresses.
Yes, I know, but also above the page itself, not the IP.
Plus, I must say that when I saw that mark for deletion, as far as I saw it, I was like, okay, that's it.
Fuck you.
No, it's not fuck you. It's like it took me so long to get to the point that I got the balls to actually start an article, and then the first thing that I'm saying is marked for deletion. Even if I can argue against it, and you know, I have more self-confidence than other people. So I am verbal, and I can fight it out. I'm not afraid of that.
What solution do you suggest?
I think, first of all, I think the top pages should be more accessible, readable. You know, if there's something that is happening right now on the top page, I have to search the page with Firefox to actually find keywords to actually know what's going on there.
There is being worked at.
What?
There is being worked at because there's an extension, and you edit the top page for article, and it will be changed. You get a message in the toolbar at top. So it's being worked on, but like all.
Not really. I will tell you on the Wikipedia thread.
Yeah.
But it's exactly the opposite because it makes it very difficult to refactor discussions.
It makes it very difficult for the users that are used to the old system, but the new users.
It's easier to post a message, but it's certainly not to find all the messages or to organize them because it's very messy.
You know, we would always go back to the.
There is a discussion on mediawiki.org.
We would always go back to the okay, how to make the interface better, you know,
But
I think the culture has to do with
Let's
that.
say you can find the top page, what then? What do you want to do then? What do we do with the top page when the article is unacceptable?
Well, I'm not talking about unacceptable.
No, let's say the
I
article
think there
is
should
not
be
sufficient. The article is on a topic that is not sufficient. It's the first article of a new user. What do we do with it?
Like, for example, if the user is logged in, and
Let's say we have perfect communication with it. Let's take that problem away.
Okay. If we have perfect communication with it, if it's a first article and we know it's a first article from a logged in user that we have their email, we can send them an email and tell them thank you for contributing your first article to Wikipedia.
So what if there is no email address on the user page of the user?
I'm talking about we talked about perfect communication.
Yes, let's say
There's always been problems. But I'm saying even even open after the edit, give them some encouragement, because it's scary. Wikipedia editing is very scary.
May I continue? This is done in the German Wikipedia. We have there is a template for greeting new people and giving them the links they need.
And maybe even pinging editors to let them know this is a new article in your field. Go support it, not go police it. Go support it.
Yeah,
it's a culture of
mentoring. There's also this mentoring program, but the problem with the mentoring program is that the users need to find the mentors.
Yes. I know it. I mean, the Dutch one, we copy to it.
He's right that if you create the first article and you press F5 to see it, you're like very proud. I made my first article. It's a template on it. It's very attacking.
So maybe we should have some kind of hidden template that if an article is not like vandalism, that you don't delete it instantly. Just wait a week, give them a sign that it might be deleted because it's and you explain it. So that's the first thing they see is not a red article, that the article is gone, and you just see your talk, right? Maybe that's a solution.
That's one thing. Maybe I don't know if I'm not a hardcore Wikipedian, so I don't know if there were discussion about chats or IRC integrated into as an additional to the talk page or whatever. But if I would have been invited to a simple talk and have been able to talk with someone rather than with guidelines, I would have imagined people there rather than this tough bureaucracy that people see in Wikipedia.
So mainly you need to change the templates we use, because you get now templates from, hey, thanks for your article, it's going to get deleted, and there's at least the Dutch Wikipedia,
that's really rude.
The German Wikipedia and French Wikipedia, not really information where you have to go to discuss. It should be more like, so thank you for your article, we need the discussion, please go to there. And it would be like completely different for a user.
Do you think that the introduction of Wikilove will solve this problem?
I think so.
The implementation of Wikilove.
Wikilove is like saying to a user that you like this article.
Yes, but that's for more experienced users, is it not?
Okay,
so you could like the first attempt of someone as well.
Yes.
If you adapt yourself to new users, if you put yourself in their shoes. But I'm also not convinced Wikilove would solve that problem. I would rather think the way the German Wikipedia does it is they welcome users when they register, but that's not necessarily the time they start their first article. In fact, it's rarely such. And so what he has suggested was to give them, once they've started their first article, give them a thank you in some way on their talk page, on the article's talk page.
All like now, from my head, like 25 wikis where you create an account or you go and usually you get instantly the welcome message. So you get the information before you do anything.
Yeah, but I remember my time when I registered in 2005, I finally registered an account and I didn't notice that talk page message for a year or so. And certainly after I noticed it, I didn't click on all those links because the first ones were already overwhelming. With such long talks such long pages containing lots of links and
lots of bureaucracy, bureaucratic talk that you're not familiar with.
Yeah, when I had the first deletion, it was the Dutch Wikipedia has like one big page where all the deletions of the day are noted. So you have like a huge list with all the articles, with all the talks about it. And that's difficult. But also the English one is also not good. Because on the English one, if you click it, you go to your own special page with only your article and people who are complaining about it. How do you get help? Where do you get other people to help you? How do you only see the people who are fighting against you, right? You don't have help.
So I'm saying a point of intervention is finding the people who are editing for the first time, because these are people who have heard about Wikipedia for 10 years, and or at least up to 10 years, and I would say at least 8 years, and have have gotten to the point where, for me, it was almost a religious moment. You know, I am giving something to this great project, and I'm going to be, you know, a more fundamental part of it, as more than fixing titles and links and you know, some grammar. I'm actually creating a new article. This is a very exciting moment that many Wikipedians have completely forgotten about. And somebody entering the project right now, we should rethink what is Wikipedia for them now, and who is Wikipedia now, and how does it function now? If the project wants to grow, if the project wants to be more welcoming and so on.
So another problem I see that wikis are getting more denser languages. It's much harder to contribute new stuff or stuff that's not already there.
Yeah.
So I think that also many users simply don't want to put it negative, but I think it is like that. Most users, they are coming new, don't have the how do you say it, the skills, the skills to contribute.
Yeah, but for instance, in the case of the articles that I'm working on, I'll be mostly working with scholars who spend much of their time writing, so they're experienced writers. They can write for different audiences, so that is not the problem. The problem is then how to adapt the content of the article to the policies that exist.
The most important one is that you have the significance, the relevance correctly. If you have that one, nothing is a problem. I mean, because all the templates and things, if your text is correct, they will just do it for you. That's no problem. Just the relevance, if that's good, then you can say, otherwise, sure, it's good.
I think it's no accident that Kiril was inspired to do this kind of presentation because on Wikipedia we had, well, relatively huge issues about significance and utility. There were like experienced users coming on to the project and creating sub articles about, I don't know, thousands of primary schools in Macedonia, and I think that my proposition was to create actually a policy. I'm a fan of policy, but a guideline to address, to define either the line of significance or how we should deal with, well, content that's in a gray area. But what I've noticed is that I wouldn't say I faced resistance, but I would say that I wanted to start a discussion about it on the Village Pump and everywhere else. But I've noticed that administrators tend to think of policies and guidelines as set in stone, and I think that's a problem, because I don't know if I'm in the line of thought of I don't know his name, but I think that it's a Wikicultural problem that everybody knows that you can really contribute to an article, discuss the content of the article, but I don't think that, new users certainly don't know that. Most Wiki users, regular users, don't know that they can actually affect the decision-making process. They don't participate in this type of discussion. You know, what's an encyclopedia and what is not? How do we define this or that?
Encyclopedia actually do, because we have a lot of disagreements about relevance. that is significant. We have no guidelines about it. We have a proposition that is half a booklet, but we have no guidelines at all. They will never accept it, none of them. So every single point is partially accepted, and every single point is always a community vote on. So every week we have a few community votes on whether or not something is relevant, yes or no. And so everybody has to vote once again. Is it relevant, yes or no? Is it relevant, yes or no? But that's also a problem.
We need to move on to the next topic, but you know, in some way it would connect, because the project that I'm going to present is kind of to a large degree challenging a lot of the Wikipedia culture, and hopefully you would find it as an interesting intervention rather than an annoying or weird intervention. Weird is okay. So just before we start, how many of you have signed up for this talk? No, I'm just interested. And because we're in a small group, we have the luxury of introducing ourselves. So I'm Mushon Zer-Aviv, I'm from Tel Aviv. And I'll be talking about this project. Do you want to do this, like, just so we know what's in the room?
Yeah, that's
Just your name, where you're from.
You're never going to pronounce as a German one, but I'm from the Netherlands. And I'm editing Wikipedia for like since 2006. Yes.
I'm Mike. I'm a bureaucrat from Dutch Wikipedia and also as a volunteer.
I'm Federico from Wikimedia Italia. I'm Italian Wikipedia editor since about 2006 and Wikiquote administrator.
I'm Kristoff. I've been writing since 2003. I'm active in the Austrian chapter, and I'm an admin. Can you say that? Yeah, people don't like admins.
Okay, I'm Deletion. Basically editing since 2003, mostly anonymously. Then since 2005 I've registered an account to upload an image. And since then I'm more turned to editing while in. Yeah, Wikimedia in residence now, trying to figure out what this will mean. And I'm also managing editor at Zer-Aviv, so I'm really interested in getting experts and wikis together. And I'm glad to see imaging experts here.
Okay, I'm Slovan from Macedonia. I'm editing the Macedonian language Wikipedia edition from 2006. I'm a bureaucrat there, and I'm also vice president, one of the vice presidents of Wikimedia Macedonian chapter.
Okay, I've introduced myself. I'm Kiril from Macedonia also. I'm administrator of the Macedonian Wikipedia, and I'm also member and vice president of Wikimedia Macedonia.
So, I don't remember when I did my first edit. I remember I was very excited about it. I started the first article in Wikipedia as part of Wikipedia Illustrated, which I'm going to talk about. Wikipedia Illustrated is a project I started with Galia, who in her spare time also serves as my wife. And what we do is we make illustrations for Wikipedia articles, which sounds pretty straightforward, but turns out to be not so straightforward. Galia was supposed to be here with me presenting, but because this project has been kind of a baby for some time, but then this happened, another baby, actual baby, was born a bit before his time. He was supposed to be born in a month from now, so she's with him is okay, but she couldn't be with us here. So I just wanted to mention this. So a bit about Galia. This is the part that she was supposed to be presenting, or usually in this kind of presentation she does. So she's she's coming from fine art. She's been doing big oil paintings, and she moved to watercolors. Her work is not digital. She's not a very digital person in general. She deals with outworld, exhibitions. She sells works and so on. So you can see a bit of her style. And at some point she started, in 2009, she started getting interested in illustrations. We lived in New York for 5 years. And she started doing illustrations for the New York Times and other publications. And it was an interesting transition for her because it's a completely different world and with different dynamics. So these are more kind of the illustration works. So in a way, this project for her is merging two worlds. She basically she chooses articles and enjoys this artistic freedom and as an illustrator, she basically gets to work with text and to work outside of the art world, for better or worse. And she for this project, we gained this access to a community. And a community that exists beyond the art world or the illustration world. Now, a bit about myself. I actually started with illustration as well. I used to publish underground comic books in the early 90s, early and late 90s. From there I kind of moved to more design. I have a design studio called Shual. We do a lot of design, and I focus a lot on digital design, interaction design, and so on. I'm also very involved in thinking and writing about collaborative practice. I'm one of the authors of a book called Collaborative Futures, a book written collaboratively about the future of collaboration. And from the perspective I'm coming from, I've been specifically interested in writing about design, what happens with design in the collaborative process. Because what we've seen is that, projects like, I've been involved with free software as well, and I've been leading a free software project as a designer, which is an interesting experience in itself, and kind of leads me in the direction of what happens with design, because we're talking so much about free software and software interface, and user interface is such an important part of design, of software. How come that is not being collaborated on in the same level? And I've been writing about that in the book, and in a way, Wikimedia Illustrated is the creative perspective of this ongoing research. So why do we do this? There's a lot of excitement about collaboration, and it's an excitement that we're very excited about. We're part of this excitement. We're seeing it with free and open source software. We're seeing it with Wikipedia, and these are, when we're talking about online collaboration, the two first examples are, Wikipedia and Linux, right? Or Linux and Wikipedia. But the trajectory is like, okay, so this is a new thing. It's happening because of the internet. Other creative practices should follow along. But what we're seeing is both of these collaborations are built as collaborative models around text, either if it's code or it's encyclopedia text or encyclopedic articles. And when it comes to image, we haven't really seen a collaborative model raised around images. We've seen image sharing. We've seen people uploading their images to repositories and creating, even with Wikipedia Commons, people are uploading works, but we're not seeing what's called the co-creation, right? Like we're seeing on Wikipedia articles where works are being created together. And when we are seeing it, we're still not seeing, this huge collaboration in these attractive models. So after 10 years, it's important to say that Wikipedia has become, it's not an underdog anymore. Wikipedia has become the place where history is being written. And we are claiming that the visual part has become, is a bit of a blind spot for Wikipedia. A blind spot that we want to engage. It's not hard to make that point that especially if you compare it to at least my experience of an encyclopedia, I was excited about the encyclopedias much before I could read. I would flick through Britannica or other encyclopedias that we had as image repositories, as a window to the world, even before text meant anything to me. The same cannot be said about Wikipedia. And Wikipedia is not a place you're going to in order to learn about things visually. Now, we're asking why. So the first answer that everybody thinks about is copyright, right? There are stringent rules about copyright, and if you can't take you can't just take images and put there, and because images fall in the public domain 70 years after the death of the creator in many of the Western world countries. At least, this has become a problem for free culture projects, and specifically we're seeing that a lot of the images that we do see in Wikipedia are very dated. It's kind of historic, and this historic aspect serves another thing. So by using historical images, those kind of notoriety, right? It's a part of history, so it deserves to be in Wikipedia. And it's also kind of removed, right? It's further away from where we are right now. It's objective to a certain degree. It's factual that this is a painting that made it for history, and therefore applicable to the guidelines as we imagine them translating into images, right? Maybe the problem is that Wikipedia is not very inviting to visual artists. So this is not how you would imagine a visual collaboration, right? And maybe it's that image making is simply less collaborative, and there's no way around it, and forget about it. There are with all due respect to collaborative culture and to open free culture, we should understand that it's about text and not about other things. I think many of us are much more hopeful, including myself, about the potential of free culture, and therefore even though this is a hunch, we want to make sure we want to try to see what can be done to kind of challenge these obstacles. So what are we doing? We're trying to. What I'm trying to do, we're trying to develop models for open collaboration of visual culture. And this is kind of the big goal. And how are we doing this? First of all, through a blog. We started this blog, Wikipedia Illustrated.org, where we're uploading, the structure of the project is kind of inspired by all the encyclopedias. It's alphabetically ordered, 26 illustrations for 26 Wikipedia articles. And the blog, the reason we're taking the process to outside of Wikipedia is because we're trying to play with interface as well. So there's comments under each one of the posts. There are drafts that are being uploaded and so on. So we're hoping that through exposing the illustration process, we can try to have a collaborative process emerge. So yeah, this is comments. And the idea is that, you know, people are thinking about collaboration on images for Wikipedia, but thinking about a shared canvas. Everybody will get a pen and you will create an image together, kind of like you create an article together. But because images are less linear, or they're not linear, unlike text, this is becoming complicated, and the examples that we have for shared canvases have not shown us great results. So we're trying to take advantage of text in these discussions as the first thing.
Excuse me, could you clarify a thing? Are we talking only about images or also animations, graphs, and so on?
We're talking about animation and graphs are relevant as well. And the points that we're trying to make are relevant to every image. Basically, it's even relevant to a certain degree to video as well, and even to photography. So
for instance, vectorial images are just text.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that as well, because that's an important point. And keep it for the discussion because I want to address it. Okay. So the important thing is that we're not only creating the blog, we're trying to create a book. So an output of the project would be a book like all the encyclopedias, printed alphabetically ordered, and kind of kickstarting this attempt. And so how does the process work? We upload the draft, and when the draft is when the illustration is done, we upload it to Wikipedia, and then it's marked as done. We invite people to comment on the drafts before we upload them to Wikipedia. So these 26 illustrations are one initiative. But there are other initiatives around Wikipedia Illustrated. We do workshops. This is a workshop from Berlin in February, where people came with their sketchbooks, paints, laptops, and came with articles that they had in mind, and started illustrating them together and discussing them together. We also we collaborate with educators. And this is a Skype call we did with a class in New York that have run an image making class that have run a Wikipedia Illustrated assignment. So that is another perspective to get people involved. So I want to show a couple of examples, but I want to explain how we choose articles. So. Because, and you know, many Wikipedians have talked about it before, that the way you address Wikipedia is through your passion. You have a passion to a topic. You have, and that's what makes you stay in Wikipedia as well. You get to engage your passion. We want to find that passion with image making. There is a lot of passion involved with art, with illustration, with image making in general. We want to see how that can be applied to free culture. So the first thing that Galia does is, and Galia, so far Galia has been doing all of the illustrations. Going forward, we will probably collaborate with that as well. So Galia is starting to illustrate articles she's interested in. Okay, and then we found that because we've been talking about the project so much, and the questions, in the key questions for the project, the articles have been more and more revolving around these questions. And so we've done some editorial work that all of the articles and the discussions around the articles kind of feed back to the discussion about the project, and questions about collaboration and collaborating models around the visual content. So that is how we're choosing, we're doing the editing, and then Here's a first example. This is the article for the letter A, illustrating the article, the ash heap of history. Now, the ash heap of history is kind of the trash bin of history, where things that were kind of didn't make it into history, like it's kind of a mythical place. And the way we see it, Wikipedia has been amazing about pulling a lot of information from the ash heap of history and getting them back into history. And as I mentioned before, Wikipedia is where history is being written today. And that is what's going to be shared, and that's what's going to be preserved. But to certain degree, we feel like Wikipedia has forgotten how people have remembered through history, and that is through images. Much before people could read and write, they've been telling stories to each other and referring to images, right? And images have been very, very strong about maintaining knowledge. To a certain degree, this is not a part of what is happening in Wikipedia today, or not, definitely not to the same level of commitment. Another article, Doppelganger. So Doppelganger is another fictional entity. This is for the letter D. Now the Doppelganger is kind of your evil twin brother or sister, brother in our case. And they look like you, but they're evil. They're the bad copy of you. And that is another fear. It's a fear that image makers have about releasing content, because they're afraid that if I release my illustration or my artwork, somebody would take it and create something horrible out of it. And then I would see it's like walking in the street and meeting my evil twin. And one of the things that we're trying to communicate to artists is that we're trying to communicate this idea of Creative Commons licenses. And these are different drafts for the same thing. We're trying to tell them it's not about losing control. It's trying to create some options between all rights reserved and public domain, and allow you to choose how to distribute your work, because you want to distribute your work. You don't want to keep it in the drawer or just in one channel. And this is so part of this project is advocacy within the creative community. So another article that we haven't illustrated yet is for bathroom singing. So there is an article in Wikipedia about bathroom singing. Maybe some of you would argue that this should have not made it through the line of sufficiency, but I would argue it should have. And there is a passion for doing something for yourself, creating for yourself, expressing for yourself. This is something that within the ethics of Wikipedia, no, we're doing this thing together for the history of knowledge and so on. This is kind of big words, but a part of Wikipedia and a part of what gets people to write articles, and there's tons of articles like bathroom singing that are about, I have a passion for this thing and I'm going to do it and I want to hear my echo. It's kind of an illustration of the echo chamber. And this is part of what we're trying to find, because what we've seen when it comes to image making in Wikipedia, there's this expectation that when it comes to creating an image, we would put our passions aside, create something technical, something we can all agree on. We would argue that people are bringing a lot of passion into writing. We need to find that passion in illustration, and we need to follow follow some paths that are not obvious when it comes to creating content for Wikipedia.
So you plan to illustrate that?
Yeah. Those are sketches. They're not really done yet. But another article that we're going to illustrate is the Wikipedia neutral point of view. So what is a neutral point of view when it comes to images? Okay, and And the Wikipedia neutral point of view, as you know, is one of Wikipedia's 5 pillars. And there's a quote here in the guidelines: to be neutral is to describe debates rather than engage in them. And what images do well is describe. So describe from a certain distance, especially when the arguments are very available. This is an opportunity. This is actually what we're saying. You know, artists don't shy away from these opportunities, because this is an opportunity to actually have a point of view, but not necessarily fall into this. Okay, I need to be objective. Wikipedia doesn't attempt to be objective. Nobody can be objective. Objective is a view from nowhere, right? So in a way, we can read this as an opportunity for image making. And another article that you might be familiar with is for the letter I: ignore all rules. Now the projector is a bit problematic, but ignore all rules is another one of the 5 pillars of Wikipedia. And obviously there are some rules we need to ignore. We're talking about the English Wikipedia. So maybe it's not one of the pillars in every Wikipedia, but it was.
It's a pillar.
What? It's a pillar. It's one of the 5 pillars.
Should be applied everywhere.
Okay. So we definitely, because when the Wikipedia rules have been made, they've been made for text. We have to ignore rules, and I think this. Making this one of the 5 pillars is an invitation to rethink how should we address things that we haven't thought about before. I think this is one of the points of hope that we have about kind of figuring this out. This is unknown knowns. This is the article that I contributed to Wikipedia. This idea, unknown known, is an idea introduced by Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek, and he's been talking about the unknown known being the thing that we don't know that we know. So it's kind of the subconscious. And through digging through this project and thinking and talking with more people about it, we're finding that we are starting to find to expose some of the unknown knowns of Wikipedia, some of the underlying ideology of Wikipedia. And in the heart of it is this tension between read-only and read-write. You know, this idea that every text that you're reading is, if you can read it, you can write it. This is one of the things that drives Wikipedia to, and when you come across things that don't follow this principle, you know, you hit the wall. So, you know, when we published this illustration, the title of the post was "Is image making a provocation on Wikipedia ideology?" Because when I put an image there, I'm saying you can read it, but you can't necessarily write it, because you need to be able to create images, or you need to be able to download the image and then open it in some editing software. Or like the whole idea that I'm putting something there and it is still a part of Wikipedia, but it's not as accessible. There's not an equal balance between reading images and making images is really challenging something in the core of Wikipedia.
I can't agree completely. I know what you're saying, but I can't agree completely, because in the artistic community, the very important, especially in digital one, the very important point is critique, is comments. So you post something and you expect actually people to react on that, and sometimes they see a sketch like that and say, oh, the right hand is slightly longer than it should be, and you look at it and say, oh, right, yeah, sure. And that's a very, very valuable thing, because you've been looking at that hand for an hour when you were drawing it, and people don't need to install any new software for that. But they need to have an instrument to provide a critique.
I completely agree with you, and that's exactly why we have taken the process to an interface that has discussion within it. But one of the interesting things that we've seen, the first illustration that we uploaded, the first comment that we got from the Wikipedia was like, the first thing that they said, excuse me, I'm not an imager, I'm not an illustrator. So they're starting with the, I don't know how to do this, but here's my, and this was a Wikipedia editor who was excited about the project, but felt completely disempowered in discussing it. So even if it's possible,
it's not always a bad thing. Imagine that he would just go there and say, okay, fix this, and fix that.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, and when it comes to the other side, where for the artists to start getting feedback from everybody, it's not very easy either. But I can actually bring the slide up with a comment in a second. Another article for the letter F, fight or flight response. So fight or flight response is this behavioral response where in history, in prehistory, it was responding to a threat by either attacking back or running away. And today we're talking about response as aggressive response versus going and watching TV. So this is how this evolved. And there's a lot of discussion about where does watching TV stands when you compare it to editing Wikipedia. But specifically, we feel like the attempt that we're trying to do is complex. It's a fight, and what we've seen so far is that image makers have chosen to fly, to run away from this great opportunity for a creative community. We're choosing fight, and we know that it would cost in some fight in the way. But so we're ready to fight. Basically, that's what we're saying. Almost done. This article is not illustrated yet, but we actually want to illustrate the disambiguation page for victory. So what would be a victory for Wikipedia Illustrated? Would victory be what would be success? So if an illustration is included in Wikipedia and nobody kicks it out, is that the good sign that we're hoping for? Would we be able to...
You want to put an image on a disambiguation page? But it has multiple meanings.
What?
The word has multiple meanings.
Yeah, that's
the fun part of it. That's the fun part of it. It's a challenge, but I can see immediately how lots of artists can jump on that. Because if you can combine kind of 3 or 4 meanings in one image,
and maybe an image is ambiguous, and
how does that mean your picture would only be applicable to the English Wikipedia? Because pictures in English would only be that one, right?
There should be a different picture for
there have been some workshops have contributed to other language Wikipedias, but actually the fact that you're bringing up the question about language, creating illustrations for Wikipedia opens the opportunity to use them across different languages. Obviously, if you put an illustration on the disambiguation page, it doesn't automatically fit in every translation of the term. But stay with me for a second about the disambiguation issue, because we're not sure that even being inclusion in Wikipedia is what we're striving for. That would be the success, or that do we strive to create consensus-based image making? That doesn't necessarily sound like a good thing. Maybe it is, we're not sure. But when we come to the disambiguation stage, what is disambiguation? Where is this term even coming from? Disambiguation is coming from computer science. It's a term in computer science that says the software cannot, computers cannot live with ambiguity. They have to disambiguate. To disambiguate means to say, what do you mean? You mean strategic victory, tactical victory? We can't do anything with it unless we know exactly what you mean, which again does not translate back to image making. With image is basically image thrives with ambiguity. Ambiguity is the key of image making, and so when thinking about disambiguation in image making, we're saying maybe we should really think about re-ambiguation. This is a great challenge to what Wikipedia has been doing so far. But we're saying, is there room for re-ambiguation within free culture in general and Wikipedia specifically? Should there be? And if there is no room for ambiguity within Wikipedia, can a collaborative image making process thrive there? The re-ambiguation is also the title of the book that we're going to publish. I was hoping to launch a Kickstarter campaign today here as a part of this presentation, but I didn't take into account that Kickstarter works only in the US. Kickstarter, crowdfunding, I won't get into that because it's not relevant right now. But just to conclude, what's next for the project? So first is parenthood. That has been that would obviously have some effect over the project, like the fact that Galia is not here with us today. We're going to continue working and probably starting collaborative process ourselves, where I continue sketches that Galia started and so on. Kickstarter campaign to fundraise, to crowd fund the book launch, and how can you get involved? First of all, we're trying to open source the image making process. So for that we need your feedback, definitely here, but also on the blog. We want you to join the conversation on the blog, to respond to illustrations, to even try to think how to respond to images. We have guest illustrations on the blog, so anyone is involved can just click the contribute button and upload an image, and we will publish it and discuss it. So visual contributions to Wikipedia. When an illustration is done, it's uploaded to Wikipedia. We want to run more workshops, and if anybody is interested in running their own workshops or getting their friends to run workshops, we can work with you on that. We want to have more class assignments, because that was an interesting way of getting people involved. So thanks, and questions?
The files, are they already on Wikipedia? Or
what?
The files you just showed, are they already on Wikipedia?
Not all of them. So some of them are, some of them are still as drafts. We had this discussion whether to upload the draft to Wikipedia, the same way like you would upload a stub. But it's not as easily collaborated on, so we're not really sure. And what?
As you would upload a stamp as in under for use, or
No, a stub.
The stuff, short articles.
sorry.
There are pages on comments where people draw a picture and upload like every stage of them so that other people can collaborate. And when I look at your presentation, you want other people to collaborate, but you don't give them the option by only showing the draft.
No, but they can download like the same way that like they can download from Wikipedia, they can download from from Wikipedia Illustrated. So there is the invitation to take this illustration and do something with it is there. We're not sure that the way to collaborate will be, especially, and you know, I mentioned that Galia's illustrations are not digital, which makes them harder to collaborate on. There was this point about vector art. There's no doubt that vector art is closer to code and closer to text, and therefore would be easier to manipulate. But at the same time, are we saying that you can only collaborate, you can only co-create vector graphics? Or are we saying that this is the only style that accepts collaboration? Or are we even saying that you know, remember with text, the form and the formulation of the idea is one. When it comes to images, it is not. So by getting even if you got them, even if you would have been able to edit an image as easily as you can edit a Wikipedia article, it is not linear. So it's not like, oh, what I want to do, what I think needs to be done with this image is to move the nose somewhere else, or whatever, or to make the hand a bit bigger. That is a very small intervention to the format, rather than what you can do with text, which is completely change the formulation of the idea, but still keep some of the idea there.
Also, the environment in Wikicommons and in Wikipedia is not very inviting for uploading your work, especially when it's not really finished.
Yeah, and this is something that we haven't talked about yet, but there is a certain aspect of first impression. When you have the first impression of the image, it's different than the first impression of the text. So we're afraid that if we put a draft there, they would be marked for deletion even before they're given a chance.
There's something in the whole process that I don't understand. You take a word and you make a picture for it, right? But that's the end. The entire picture is the meaning of the person who is making the art, but everybody else sees something different. The picture is not one thing. The picture is this ambiguity, like you said. So everybody else will see something different in it. They might see just a crocodile with a person on it, and not the fair flight and other responses. So if you do this is not more likely. You always put one person's opinion on it. And that does not seem like the Wikipedia approach. Plus, it's the English Wikipedia, so it has to be in English language. An image can never be in a language. So that's why it has to, that's why I think the comments is the most obvious place to put a picture, not on a Wikipedia. That people on the Wikipedia projects decide for themselves, the majority, which image they want, and put it in comments.
But there are images on Wikipedia, right?
Yes, but they have been decided by the majority to put it on. There are like lots of pictures of a tree on comments, and then they pick the nicest one, and they put it there. Everybody agrees that's a tree. But they don't take a picture of a tree, one person, and they say, this is a tree, and then that's it.
Well, it's not exactly right that is the process in every case. Like, people do take a picture of a tree and put it on Wikipedia. They don't wait for people to have some
It will
conversation.
get deleted, and there will be hundreds of pictures of trees will get deleted before. But this way you really hurt the artist if you delete it, because it takes a lot of time to take like one image. And if you have to make hundreds of images before people agree on, yeah, that's the right one, then it would be so much effort.
Exactly, and we're trying to ask ourselves, are we striving to create a consensus-based image-making process? And is that, while it works for text, would that work for image?
The text can be completely deleted and undeleted. The only way you can do it is like you build from the bottom. But can we go back and build it again, and go back and build it again, and again, and again, and again?
So do you feel, would you say that
collaborative building of the text, usually the text gets deleted all the way through. It's not like it's one word, another word, another word. It's not growing, it's deleting and cutting it again. So the image
Can you say that I don't see your point? Do you mean that this should happen on Commons so that
I don't think the whole
also
project
other
will work.
Wikipedias can
There are some
use those images or what?
I think the images can never reflect the feelings of the community. It can never reflect more than just one artist's idea or a few artists' idea, but you can never take an image and delete it and create it again, and delete it and create it again.
Necessarily true, and
I think it's
it is
difficult.
necessarily
It's not necessarily true, but it's a big problem, I think.
But the question, so now, you do agree that there's room for images?
Sure,
in
there's
Wikipedia?
a lot of room.
And do you agree there's room for more images in Wikipedia?
Of course.
And do you disagree about collaboratively creating or
If it's possible,
even
sure, but
creating?
I don't. This approach seems a bit off because some of the images I would never have seen that word in it. If you present that image to anybody in this room, they would never have come up with that word on that image. So that is not even if they get 100 guesses. So the image does not reflect the word.
It brings an illustration of all readers.
It is not an illustration of the
The
word.
imagination of all is not the same, and everybody has a different image and different illustration about the topic. So we cannot describe the definition of a majority about the topic and
One artist
Well,
illustration.
I don't think that nowadays images should be meant to replace text.
Yeah, but
So,
if there are many artists that can illustrate the work differently, then why those do not compete each self to choose the best illustration about the world?
Well, probably there is no best because in
Yeah.
But here I just took the page for schizophrenia, for instance. There are several such images which are not necessarily clear.
Also, those images would not reflect the word, right?
Yeah, and I think perhaps we don't have to keep on reflecting the word. And also keep in mind, an article might have different images. You might have, well, for schizophrenia, it's really hard to pinpoint.
Those images are agreed on by the people. That's,
Yeah, but this would be part of the same
Is this one agreed on because that person, the artist, puts a lot of work in it. And if the people don't agree on it, the artist is simply very disappointed because he will believe it. How many artists know for sure that
It
the
will
entire
not be
people...
deleted on Commons or...
On Commons, no. On Commons never, but
Not on
on
Commons,
Wikimedia.
but
If we don't talk about the images, it's a complete process. You are duplicating a process already there to different sites. Because we have on Commons pages, we have on Commons like 50 users that are doing the same, with uploading every time they have a draft. And now you say Commons doesn't do that, you need to go to your site. So you're just doing the same thing on a different site.
until we contributed to Commons and then
Yes, but
to the top.
I love the illustration of some very difficult words. For example, what is the illustration of reinforcement or encouragement?
Yeah,
Can you illustrate it? And what if many people think that it's not the true image about it and the true illustration, and they would like to make some different or imagine some different about it?
So there's definitely a meta discussion here as well, which is what are the boundaries of collaborative culture, and maybe we argue that you don't need to go too far to actually reach them, because even within Wikipedia, the model constantly breaks, right? When it comes to image making, the model breaks. Can we find a different model? All the things that you said, and you're like, this cannot work. Yeah, we completely agree, but the only way for us to find a different way to work, Wikipedia was not supposed to work, right? Wikipedia was not supposed to work, but image making in Wikipedia right now is not supposed to work. Let's try it and find out, yeah.
The process is already there. There are like 50 people doing right the same thing on Wikimedia Commons, like every draft on the free license, everybody can use every draft. You're just making a website in WordPress with the image on it. There are no drafts of it. You're like doing...
No, we are including that. Yeah, we are.
Drafts are not...
But on that I agree with them. The more you do it, the better. If there are only 50 people, and he has 50 people, so that's good. But if
Yeah,
you
but
make
it
it
should be
overload,
But what we're trying to do is also experiment with the interface. I agree with you that it needs to be on commons. Wikipedia Illustrated.org should not exist. And hopefully it will not exist because Commons would have a solution for that, would be addressing that. We're saying the bureaucratic process of getting Wikipedia Commons to change its interface is you know, you need to become a Wikipedia bureaucrat before that, and by the time you're a Wikipedia bureaucrat, you completely forgot what didn't get you in the door in the first place.
But you can.
I disagree with you, and with them obviously. The question was that, well, you should all move to Wikicommons. As I said, and as you agreed, Wikicommons is not really invited for that kind of thing, and there is no technical support as well. But there is no community and
There
support.
is an entire wiki project on.
Well, it's uploading.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
not a community.
Just let me finish. I think that, they say, why don't you go to Wikicommons? You said that Wikipedia Illustrated should not exist and you should move there. I think you should actually consider moving away from that. Just because if you think that your views on collaborative creation of images is so different from Wikipedia paradigm, you should not force yourself to fit into that paradigm. Just, there are multiple wiki websites outside Wikipedia. They're doing just fine. I can assure you.
So
Just leave.
we want to address that paradigm, and we want to raise these questions that are, you know, that, look, I'm here. This is a place to be engaging the Wikipedia community.
No. This is a place.
Only you guys who are interested in
This is a place for engaging the wiki community, not especially Wikipedia. There are some people from Wikipedia, but there are people from other places as well.
Right.
And Wikipedia is not the only place for wiki efforts.
It's true.
And there are wikis that are found on completely different philosophy.
as long as your images are under the correct license, they can still use the Wikipedia.
Yes, they can just get them.
If you just order themselves, don't upload them, maybe other people will find them, upload them.
Yeah.
Then it's much more likely that they will be accepted because people agree on it, accept it.
And we want to reach these points. We want to get to it. Like right now, what we have is tons of obstacles. But you know how they say in psychology, half of solving the problem is recognizing it. So we recognize there is a problem with image making and collaborative editing, and especially with Wikipedia. If we're asking ourselves why, here's a couple of reasons why. We could have decided, okay, Wikipedia Illustrated, we're only illustrating in vector graphics, kind of technical illustrations of machines. This would have been accepted, no problem whatsoever, and then none of the questions would have been raised. The reason that Galia is painting with watercolors is because they can't be edited. Well, she has other reasons.
Well, you could do something like project. If someone else has made modifications to the digital copy of the watercolor, then you could project that and actually
differences. And we want to
be
get
working on the canvas. Yeah, there's ways to do that, but it's all complicated.
It's super exciting to like Wikipedia was exciting in the first days and was completely was not supposed to work. This is not supposed to work. It might not work, but the questions. Teachers, somebody interviewed us in Berlin in Transmedia when we were presenting it there, and they were saying something we didn't think about, that they really liked the project name Wikipedia Illustrated, because by reaching the boundaries of the collaborative process, we're kind of illustrating Wikipedia, illustrating what works in Wikipedia and what Wikipedia is and is not, right?
But the files on your site are like on a free license?
Yeah, obviously.
But when you upload the draft, workers will make it GP. It's not effective file anymore. Other people cannot edit it. You upload the draft.
Why? You can download it.
Yeah, but then it will be a PNG or JPEG?
No, it's SVG. Well, vector artist versus work with
yeah, but
SVG.
WordPress doesn't support SVG.
What doesn't support?
WordPress, the software he uses for his site.
Oh.
So there's...
First of all, it's oh, sorry.
So you want cooperation, but you upload a file that can't be edited, so there is no option for collaboration.
So one of the reasons that we're opening the project to interaction, and actually this weekend somebody is supposed to be uploading the work that they've done in vector format. There's no problem showing an SVG in WordPress, and I don't think, and yes, as I mentioned, if all of the illustrations would have been SVGs for completely objective, technical drawings, we would have said, yes, we can make Wikipedia Illustrated, but personally, I'm not excited about drawing technical illustrations, and most artists are not. So I will prove to myself that I can contribute to Wikipedia visually, but I would not be developing a model for visual free culture, which is what we're striving for.
I think you're touching on the significance again, yes. Because whether or not you want to describe things which are not like standardized, so then you get I'm doubting about the significance of the images. If the new artwork is significant enough, if you can just upload all of the pieces of art that there are onto the Wikipedia.
Yeah, so that's what you get at the Wiki Commons. Significance, notability, and support. You have to prove that this particular...
whether people can learn something from the image. That's one of the most significant
questions here. And I think that is debatable, like many other things in Wikipedia. And again, I would repeat that Wikipedia guidelines have been made for text collaboration.
And therefore, we have Commons.
Commons has
Commons is not Wikipedia guidelines.
And it's not a solution.
Commons guidelines.
Commons guidelines for images.
Common guidelines for images are educational, images with educational quality.
Yes.
And we definitely fit that because all of this project is very educational when it comes to the questions that we're raising. Still, we're saying when it comes to image making, we will hit much more walls because it's less technical, because we don't have this the text as something, a language that we can all agree on. Visual language changes very rapidly, not only between cultures, but between people. So, again, you're supposed to have these looks that you have on your faces now. But that is the purpose of this project. That it's a sincere attempt to push collaborative culture and specifically Wikipedia forward. And we would love for you guys to, and I speak as we because it is we, but we would love for you guys to try to help push this forward by going to the blog, getting more people involved in the conversation, getting more image makers involved in the conversation, and we addressing the Wikipedia and the wiki communities further with these questions.
I would like to say that I actually didn't plan to stay on this presentation, but I'm glad I did because I'm a Wikipedian and an image maker. I used to be a graphic designer, so I do feel that no debate has been raised about images on Wikipedia, and that's why I think that it's a good idea to find a way to make a sort of a controversy around this.
That's a making point. So that's
no, it's
sometimes complicated.
But maybe this will evolve into another project, maybe illustration.wikimedia.org. Some kind of collaboration that will not the collaboration between artists that will produce illustrations and knowledge and ideas but maybe they will not be directly related to the articles in Wikipedia, and maybe but they can stand independently. I hope I was clear on that. So we don't know. You don't know well which way will this evolve. Maybe you'll realize that maybe Wikipedia is not the best place for abstract art or watercolors. Personally, I do photo collages and Photoshop work mostly. But well, if someone maybe develops some Wikimedia community sort of collaborative software where several artists can work on a collaborative project, it would be awesome. In its own right, not for illustrating Wikipedia articles. It's illustrating free culture evidence.
Yeah, and that would be kind of just a wiki, not Wikipedia addendum, but just a wiki for visual. You have a picture and you click on edit and you can add a few lines.
Yeah, well, Kaltura maybe goes in this direction. They do video editing for that. I haven't seen it working well so far, but at least they should have many tools that would be reusable for still images.
There's definitely interest in the same questions from the open video direction as well, because the same questions are being raised. Even though the linearity of video helps, it kind of makes people think linearly, which helps collaboration.
Can one request images?
Yes, so within the Kickstarter campaign that we want to launch, do you know Kickstarter? Kickstarter is like crowdfunding, people support projects before they happen by donating money, and then in a lot of cases they get rewards. So one of the bigger rewards that we want to give is that you commission us to illustrate a Wikipedia article, and in a lot, another reward is you get the original sent by mail and whatever. So you can ask for illustration, you can raise ideas for illustrations. We still have, and we're going to write a post about it. There are still some letters that we don't have articles for, that we want to keep within the same theme of re-mediation, asking these questions again. So if you think about an article in X that discussing with, you can discuss and raise the question for, that can be interesting. I think we don't have Y, we don't have Q. Think about it. So we have a mailing list. We don't use it that much yet, but subscribe to the RSS, comment, find me on Twitter, I'm @Mushon. Talk with me over lunch, and hopefully